Hi, and welcome to the Rare Business Podcast. My name is Adrian Swinsko, and I'm a consultant, advisor, researcher, and writer on all things related to customer service and customer experience. Through this podcast, I seek out and interview CEOs, entrepreneurs, business and tech leaders, and leading thinkers about what it takes to build organizations that produce better outcomes for both customers and employees in this fast-moving modern age that we live in. If this is your first time listening to one of these interviews, then welcome, and please do dive into the archives at adrianswinsko.com, as I've now completed over 250 of these interviews in the last few years. If this is not your first time listening, then thank you for returning, and I'll aim to do a good enough job to keep you coming back week after week. Anyway, that's enough from me right now. Let's get into the interview. So, welcome to the next edition of the Rare Business Podcast. With me today, I have Bruce Temkin, who is head of the Qualtrics XM Institute. Hi, Bruce. How are you doing?
Excellent. Happy to be here.
Perfect. So, Bruce, for the benefit of our listeners and readers, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and also the work that you do?
Sure. Well, a little bit myself. I have to go all the way back to when I was designing submarine missiles at the beginning of my career to now I'm with Qualtrics running the XM Institute, where we are helping the world understand and get inspired and successfully implement experience management capabilities. In between that, I had my own company, Temkin Group, where we helped some of the largest brands around the world transform around customer experience. And before that, I was 12 years with Forrester Research. So that's about a 10-second episode of a very long career.
I love the fact that I think you might be my first, can I say, rocket scientist on the podcast, which is quite cool.
I wish I was a rocket scientist. I would say I was more like a rocket engineer.
Okay, fair enough. So like less of a scientist, more of a mechanic.
Yeah, somewhere in between. Absolutely.
There you go. So you kind of said that you've just recently taken up the role of head of the Qualtrics XM Institute, and you mentioned helping brands understand this whole thing about experience management. And I know that Qualtrics have got a particular view on what experience kind of management kind of is. I mean, can you explain what that means to yourself and the folks at Qualtrics?
Yeah, I think the idea is that there is a discipline around using experience data, which we call X data, and operational data, which is an O data, bringing it together so that you can run your business more effectively and be more adaptive to changes in the market. So I like to say if you apply experience management correctly, then you're continuously learning, you're propagating those insights across the enterprise, and you're rapidly adapting to change. And so if you think about it, a lot of the experience management elements, I think, emerged in the world of customer experience, right? We learned how to design for people. We learned how to change the focus away from just process and technologies and more on the human beings that are involved in it. And also we learned how to move away from insights that were generated by periodic studies to more continuous insight collection and dissemination. So all of that is the basis for experience management. Right.
And the other thing, because all this has kind of happened, I mean, you going from Temkin Group and then joining Qualtrics, and then Qualtrics, then there was this big flash, and then Qualtrics was part of an acquisition by SAP. I mean, has that changed the focus? Has that just meant that you're now going to start to play like a even bigger game now that you're part of the SAP family?
So I have to say I've been really pleasantly surprised since the SAP acquisition. You know, oftentimes when a large company acquires a small company, and I like to say our story is we went from 7 people to 2007 at Qualtrics to 98,007 at SAP. But I was really pleasantly surprised to find that instead of SAP actually sort of tempering the experience management work that Qualtrics was doing and that the Institute was focused on, that they've embraced it. And I am really, really excited about the opportunity for us not just to influence the world through the lens of Qualtrics, but to be able to do that through the scale of SAP. Excellent.
So let me ask you, I mean, Bruce, you've been a leading light in the customer experience space for crumbs the longest time now. I'm not going to try and tot up the years because it'll just make me feel old.
Oh, good. Me too.
So I'd be really interested. I mean, this is the first time we've ever spoken. I've viewed your work from afar, with a degree of admiration and respect and things for the longest time. But it'd be really interesting for me to get your view on where the industry is at right now and kind of where it's going and how's it getting on. I mean, if I was to say to you, what sort of school report card or grade would you give the industry right now?
I give the industry like a C plus, B minus.
Okay.
And that's against, I'm a very hard grader, right? And I have a vision of where we need to get to.
Okay.
But I would also say that I would give it a D a few years ago.
Okay.
And that's about just where we are in absolute level. And I think that's just, to me, that demonstrates that we're on a long-term journey. I think that when I think about experience management, I really think about it not as sort of this thing we do on the side, but ultimately it's the transformation of how organizations operate. I think it's to me, if I look 10 years out, 15 years out, organizations are going to look radically different. They're going to make strategic decisions faster and more frequently, right? They're going to understand things about their customers, not just sort of from observing, but having a real deeper understanding of their emotions and how they as organizations impact those emotional states of both employees, customers, suppliers, everyone along the way. And so I think that we're just early in the journey. Even though I know we've been doing this for a while, I think the customer experience field has come a long way. We've introduced things like being able to look at experience design and look at the world through the eyes of journeys, not just interactions. So we've made a lot of headway, but I think it's exciting that we got a long way to go in front of us.
Perfect. I mean, and so what do you think that some of the I think you're absolutely right. I mean, and I think the different people will go will progress in different areas and different sort of speeds. But I mean, what do you think are some of the biggest challenges that many companies need to start tackling to start getting it, I guess, more right or less wrong, if you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I hear you. So I think that there's some common miscues that have to disappear for really the efforts to go in lots of companies. One is that this is about just the experience you have with customers. One of my things that I've been saying for like a long time, we're not going to go in a number of years now, is that the experience you deliver externally is a reflection of your culture and operating processes.
Sure.
And so I think there are some movements that talk about like just the experience, but really to me, you have to look at how you as an organization operate, how you want to operate, so that ultimately you can deliver consistently good experiences all over the place. And I think that's a shift because that really gets at the heart of leaders really looking in the mirror and asking themselves, how am I running this organization? Not just pointing at other people and saying, fix that experience or let's get better over there. So to me, that's one of the places. And I am really, really excited to see how many more senior executives are stepping up and starting to recognize that. That's one thing. The other thing, and I hinted to it earlier, is I'm a big believer that one of the fundamental shifts that have to happen is that over the last 10 or 20 years, there's been a heavy focus on process and technology. And that's how organizations have built themselves. That's how they built the scale. And so with the focus on process and technology, the human beings who were involved in it were almost sort of after the fact cogs in the wheels of progress.
Sure.
I think the big change, one of the big changes we see now, and certainly going forward, we have to see, is recognizing that human beings are not just participants in a process that's enabled by technology. They are the core asset of it all.
Yeah.
And so I think the focus around human beings as the center, with process and technology really there to enable them, is, while it sounds like what we do today, it actually, the nuance of that is going to be a considerable shift that I think organizations need to adopt.
Oh, sure. There's a thing that I talk about, where I talk about right now, people talk about the customer experience and the customer's experience. And then I ask people, what's the difference? And they look at me slightly quizzically. And I say, well, technically speaking, there is only 4 letters and an apostrophe. But in reality, the difference can be a country mile.
Yep. In individual, the customer's experience, I like that, because that starts talking about a human being, right? And it's personal. And we recognize, especially as sort of more and more interactions go digital, that we have the ability to deal with more individuals' experience from a way that scales. And so, I love it. The customer's apostrophe experience is about what an individual sees and how they perceive the world, and we have to think about how we affect that perception.
Absolutely. I mean, some people might say it's semantics, but actually it's not. This is where you get to the sophisticated level of understanding, rather than just kind of like stumbling around in the dark sort of thing. It's like, this is where you start actually thinking deeply about what actually matters and what it's going to take to be successful and to stand out and be sustainably competitive and all these different sort of things. And it has to start with, as you say, the human being, the customer, but not just the customer, but actually the human being, which is, because we are more than just customers. We are human beings.
Yep. Yeah. And I think that's why I like to talk about human beings, for a couple of reasons. One is, as you say, if you think about customers, and use that language, which we have to do, but then you think that their world is really aligned around whatever it is they're doing with you. And in most cases, that's not the case. But to me, when we think about experience management, it's all the people. It's the employees, it's our partners, it's our suppliers, right? The entire value chain is just full of these things called human beings.
Absolutely. And guess what? The world's full of them.
Yeah. And you know what? It's a growing number all the time.
Yes, indeed. So, Bruce, I know you're a little bit, so you don't, I was going to ask you about if there are any standout companies, or B2B or B2C, that you believe are leading the way in all this. But I mean, but also maybe not kind of companies or particular examples, but do you think because I think the thing that I understand is some of the people that listen to the podcast are also looking for clues about where to go and to learn kind of more. So maybe rather than just actually highlighting any kind of brands, as it were, do you actually have any sort of sectors or areas that you think are leading the way and are ones to watch, as it were, that you think we can learn a lot from what these people are doing, or this sector is doing, because they seem to be ahead of the curve?
Well, I think that there are definitely some sectors that do better than others, and some stuff ends up being hidden, right? I think clearly, if you look at the hospitality sectors, right, whether they're what hotels are doing, or like what a Disney is doing, they are by definition having to cater to the experience, so you can pick up some things there. I think there are really interesting things that are happening even in the automotive industry, as a lot of especially if you look at some of the luxury brands, trying to figure out how do they instill a different experience in a consistent way. Yes. But my thing is, my thing is, if you're trying to learn, look for inspiration wherever it is,
Right.
but don't try and imitate. I always worry that people say, like, if you look at Starbucks, right, they have a great experience. So maybe what we should do is have baristas serving your own liquid and having couches and jazz music go, and that's an experience. I think I would start with, for every one of your listeners, to think about, what is their brand? What is special about them? What does their brand need to be and evolve over the next several years? Because the right experience for an organization to deliver is the one that reinforces their own special brand. And so when you are looking for inspiration from other companies, you happen to see it, don't say, all right, I want to do that. What I want you to do, what I really want companies to do, is think about, oh, that worked for them in this way. How can we make that work to reinforce our brand?
Sure.
And really think about, how do you transform the idea to work for you and not just imitate the idea?
Sure. Perfect. So I want to come back to the Qualtrics XM Institute, Bruce. I mean, what's next? What's big for you guys? What are you working on now? What can we expect in the near future?
Yeah. So for those of you that know Temkin Group, and I hope many of you know us, loved us, you will know that the company went for 8 years, and for 8 years we used a single competency model that was the foundation for all of our work. We are about to release the same type of model around experience management, and the importance of having a core model that describes the competencies, the skills, the maturity associated with experience management is that we will give the industry a very clear curriculum for which we can all be learning over the next decade, right? What's important to help the entire industry move forward is that we understand the areas where we need to get good at, and that we all use the same vision of that. So we're going to be rolling out our new, what we're calling the XM operating framework. And like I said, it will be the foundation for all of our thought leadership, for all of our enablement, for all of our training, I'm guessing for the next decade. So it's pretty cool.
Fantastic. That's exciting. Well, we'll make sure when we get everything edited up and write up the highlights. I mean, actually on here, where would be, if people want to keep an eye on that, where's the best place they should go? Is that kind of Qualtrics.com and then look for the XM Institute, or where's the best place to head to, Bruce?
Yeah, so there are two places. You can go to the XM Institute, which is qualtrics.com/XM-Institute, or you can continue to follow my blog, experiencematters.blog. I'll continue to highlight new and exciting ideas and content there, and can direct you back into the assets on the Institute when appropriate.
Perfect. So one final thing, Bruce. So this is for a little bit of fun. So as we were talking just before we started the interview, I'm in the process of publishing, or at the time this goes to air, I'll have just published a new book called Punk CX. And what I'm doing, I'm starting to take a bit of a straw poll to ask people it's like creating a word cloud through audio, if you know what I mean. It's like,
cool.
What one word would they use to describe more of a punk approach to CX? So if I said to that, like, what one or two words would come to mind if I said punk and CX? What would you say?
I'd say human and personal.
Awesome.
And so, well, first of all, I love the idea of Punk CX. So good luck with the book.
Thank you.
Hopefully when this comes out, it's a roaring success already.
Well, I'll send you a copy, Bruce.
Excellent. Well, there's one. And send it to me. I want it signed.
All right.
But I love the idea of the idea of Punk CX. To me, the reason I picked those words is I think it's when I think about the punk movement, it's sort of the individuals were taking back control and doing their own thing with it.
Sure.
And it was really back to the individuals and the people. So pretty cool. I can't wait to see the book.
Awesome. Well, Bruce, thank you so much for your time and for sharing your kind of insights with us. Congratulations on the acquisition. Going from 7 to 2,000 to 98,000 in the space of 6 months or so. That's kind of just wild. Good luck with the future and the new operating kind of model framework thing that you described. I'll make sure I get all that linked up and highlighted when the blog goes out, or when the interview goes out. But thanks again for your time. That's been great.
My pleasure. It was really a thrill to chat with you. And like I said, good luck with the book.
Well, that's it for another interview. I really hope you enjoyed it. Now, every time I complete one of these interviews, I learn something new. And I try and incorporate that new learning into my writing, my speaking, my workshops, and the consulting that I do for my clients. If you're interested, you can find out more about how I work with clients over at adrianswinsko.com. But one final thing before I go, please consider heading over to iTunes or whichever podcast platform you choose to use, and do leave a review. Every little helps, as they say. Anyway, that's all for now. Thank you for listening, and do listen in again. All the very best.